Key resources are the main assets your company needs to create your product or service. Often, resources differ across different industries and markets, but how we innovate and change our resources can have a huge impact on how we innovate a business model. So let's just take a quick look at the different types of resources. So for manufacturing, for instance, they would need equipment, buildings, manufacturing plants. These are often very expensive. So in terms of investing into a new business model, it would take a lot of capital, a lot of initial investment, for instance, in manufacturing. But not all industries are physical in terms of what they do. And obviously we've got things that are more digital. Other resources are intellectual property. Intellectual property in particular gives us a unique resource that we can exploit within a marketplace. But it's not just intellectual property. We've also got things like brands, patents, copyrights, things that mean we have a resource that can be exploited and used to generate money and revenue and sales that makes it unique. Brands themselves are assets. If you think about Apple, Apple is globally recognized as a brand, but it wasn't always. And it takes a lot of marketing, a lot of investment to get to that stage where your brand is globally recognized. In terms of other assets, it's specialist skills, even creativity. If you take Apple again, one of the key aspects of Apple has been its unique ability to design products differently in a marketplace to appeal to consumers. And obviously in terms of resources, we also have things like cash, loans and debt. How we deal with money, how we use that money. And then in terms of digital, we've got different sorts of resources we can use to create a product or service. And in particular, that's why a lot of digital services use cloud partners like Google and Amazon. In terms of partnerships is another way in which you can develop key alliances that are different to your competitors. And you can innovate around the partnerships. How and who you partner with can create a unique service or product in the marketplace. What we want to consider when we look at partnerships is how and what partners can we use that help us grow and scale. How can they do things efficiently? How can they help us reduce risk and uncertainty? And clearly what we're trying to do with partners is enable a partnership that adds value in different ways. There are different types of partners though. So we have some that are strategic alliances. This is where you form normally a long-term relationship with a company. Normally there's contracts built into that. There are service level agreements. There are different ways in which you then partner with that company, understand each other, and build a relationship over a long term. Some companies actually enter into what's called a co-opetition. So, as an example, Samsung produces chips that are used in Apple iPhones, but Samsung actually produces its own version of Android smartphones, and they compete in the marketplace. But at the same time, they cooperate and work together on chip manufacturing. There's joint ventures. This is where you set up a company normally and you partner to develop complementary products. There's also just the obvious ones, particularly relevant to manufacturing, which is you have a buyer-supplier relationship. So you create partners that supply goods or services to you. So as I said, we have this idea of co-opetition. I'm just mentioned about the Samsung chips, but also then you've got things like Netflix which offers, which is an app used on an iPhone. So why does Apple, which competes with Netflix in terms of video streaming, allow Netflix as an app in its app store? Well, clearly, if it didn't, customers could get annoyed at the fact that they don't allow Netflix. So Apple wants to be as neutral as it can in terms of allowing the competition and its consumers to have a broad range of offers in its app store. So one of the things about setting up partnerships is that you sometimes can innovate by looking not just to your normal thought on partners, but maybe even look at competitors. Where can you and how can you use each other's resources or activities, or do things together sometimes? And it's surprising how many companies actually do this idea of co-opetition. Now, when it comes to cost structures, what we're trying to do within cost structures is to minimize our fixed costs and turn as many into variable costs. Now, what are fixed costs? Fixed costs are, for instance, those costs that are repeatedly within our business and don't change. Variable costs change according to how much we produce of something. So you've got things like rent, salaries, utilities generally. Whereas variable costs might vary according to how much we sell of a certain thing. So the more we sell of a certain thing, incurs more shipping costs if it's physical product. It incurs more packaging costs, because the more we sell of an item, the more packaging we use. So one of the things we have to do, or can do in our business model, is rethink how and what we transfer from being a fixed cost to a variable cost. Clearly, we want to make as much money as we can based on a level of sales. So the more we can actually change from a fixed cost to a variable cost helps us lower the amount of money we spend on a regular basis and move it over to just relative to how much we sell of a product or service. So what are the cost structures? Let's take a look at Airbnb. An Airbnb is a global platform business. It's obviously got a lot of costs in terms of cost of acquisition. In other words, its sales and marketing activities, getting on board and keeping new customers. Don't forget, people hire or hire a room for a short amount of time. So it's got to continually market itself to get new customers, new travellers on a regular basis. There's the R&D platform. So in other words, how much it spends on research and development to make sure its platform is leading edge and works on a global basis on different geographies. You've got payment processing, the whole process behind that, and how and when it collects money. You've got infrastructure. Infrastructure is basically the buildings, the material, the buildings, the employees, all those other aspects. And of course, it's got things like legal and insurance. That fits into its business model in terms of making sure that people feel confident in letting out their houses or homes or rooms. It's got lobbying, because in some countries there's been resistance, so it needs to lobby at governments and politically to make sure that it is able to do that. And obviously the other thing it's got is customer support, because it wants to make sure that there is a level of support both for hosts and for those people that are booking. Here's an exercise. Not every company is costs driven. Likewise, not every company is value driven. And so what we have here is we have 4 companies: Lidl, Ryanair, the Ritz-Carlton and Apple. And what we want to do is think about how and what they focus on. What part of the business model do they really need to focus on? What drives them in terms of their value proposition? And how do they engineer their business model to actually drive the value in the marketplace? Now, the way to look at this is as follows. If you think about Lidl, it provides very little around the customer experience in store. It's trying to sell a lot of products as simply as it can. Ryanair offers easy flights to book at a low cost. To do that, they focus very much on driving down the costs within their business, doing things as efficiently as possible. So operations, activities, resources are as low as they possibly can be. They move everything over to as much variable costs as they can. On the other hand, when you've got a value-driven business, what they focus on is more about the customer relationship, building the brand, making sure the customer experience is absolutely central. So value-driven businesses and companies really do look at the customer experience. They focus on really segmenting their customers and delivering that relationship, delivering that brand, and generating the money as being a premium position within the marketplace, versus a cost-driven business which aims for a low price, and therefore it's operationally about efficiency. In terms of a case study, let's take a look at Uber. Uber offers a better service than taxis. One of the ways it changed the market was the sales channel, and it increasingly moved resources from fixed to variable. So in other words, it moved the partnerships. And how it did that is, normally a taxi company has to pay a salary to drivers on a regular basis. The car they have to lease. So there's two fixed costs there. But how could you turn them into variable costs? Well, one of the ways you can do that is by Uber uses people that are every day have their own car, so it removes the idea of the costs of the car, and it's the individual's costs then. But then it doesn't need to pay a salary. It only pays the driver for the ride. So it's completely moved how it thinks about its resources and costs. And not only that, it's also thought about new customer segments. And it's generated a whole new set of people who now use Uber rather than owning a car. So innovation can be not just about the value proposition, it can be around every aspect of the business model canvas. And now that you understand the business model canvas, the different sections, you can start to really drill into how can we change this? What's the existing business model within the industry? How can we innovate? And just go back to that sequence and think, right, what we need to do to start with is really to focus on the customers. Develop the idea of the value proposition. What are we doing to meet customers' needs? And then we can start to fill out and look at the other boxes and think about how and what we're going to innovate. I've put together a simple PowerPoint that allows you to think about the different questions you need to ask at each stage. How you fill in the business model canvas, and how you can think about changing it. And that process is all about generating multiple business models. The chances are generating one business model won't give you a perfect innovation. You need to think about it and maybe combine different models and reflect and think about different ways in which you can innovate the different boxes. Sometimes it might be very much about focusing on the right hand side of the business model canvas. How you create and deliver value to a customer. The sales channels, the brand, the marketing, the way you do things, the way you sell things. On the other hand, it might be about the activities, how you change your variable costs, your fixed costs, who are going to be your partners, what are going to be your key resources. The way to think about this is, can we create something that's desirable in the marketplace? Will our customers want our value proposition? How does it differ versus the competition? Who are we targeting? Is it feasible? Can we actually produce it? At what cost? And is it viable? This is the way you can start to think about how you generate a business model canvas. Once you've generated several canvases or business models, one of the things we have to do is think about how we validate that. So this is a process. This is a way of thinking about the different steps of going from generating a canvas, making sure that we really then analyze that customer segment. Are we right with our assumptions? Is that customer the customer that we think they are? Thinking about then the problem solution fit. Do we have the right match? Are we matching the needs of the customer to the service or value that we're trying to put in the marketplace? Do we know why they will buy? Can we develop a minimal viable product to test? What's a quick way of testing whether they will pay in the marketplace for this? Some ideas around that are to develop landing pages, put in their pre-orders. Some companies, what they do now is they generate a product, they put it into the marketplace to see if customers are actually willing to pre-order something. So there's all ways of different testing before actually going fully ahead to building something. Do you have product market fit? Is it right in the marketplace versus competition? Are you able to deliver the right side of the canvas? In other words, are you able to reach the sales channels, do the marketing at a cost that makes sense? And this way you can take a business model and start to work it through and assess it at different stages. So let's just have a bit of a recap on what we've covered. Business model innovation isn't just about creating something new. It can be about a complete redesign of something. Dyson took the hairdryer and completely re-engineered the design of it. Tesla was very much customer driven. It cut out the middlemen. Harley Davidson built a huge community around it and was able to outcompete competitors. Amazon developed a whole infrastructure for its own business and then realized that using that infrastructure, that global network of servers and IT could be used in a different way, that it actually could offer these services out to other companies that needed a global infrastructure, that needed servers based around the world. And so Amazon started to offer cloud services for businesses so they can host their websites, they can develop on top of that. There's new channels, new ways of delivering and distributing products. There's, as we've said, Amazon are looking at doing, DHL are looking at doing. Revenue models. The Dollar Shave Club was based on a subscription model. Other companies, like Gillette, were just based on selling in stores on a regular basis. Dollar Shave Club completely changed that. It offered a good product at a lower cost and gave people the option of just subscribing